All right, here we go. Last assignment for the week. This is week 2, Friday, for science, vertebrate classifications. All right, so this top section, what we're going to do is look at the description and pick the best classification that matches that description. So we're definitely going to need our reference sheet for this. So let's take a look at number 1. It says these animals are warm-blooded, they lay eggs, and take care of their young. All right, so I'm going to get my reference sheet out. First thing they mentioned was being warm-blooded, and I know that there are only 2 types of animals that are warm-blooded here, mammals and birds. So we've narrowed it down from 5 to 2. The second thing they talked about was they lay eggs. Well, we all know that mammals, like us, give live birth. We don't lay eggs. Birds do, though. So, number 1, we're going to put birds. I'm going to cross it out so that I don't use it again. All right, number 2, these animals are warm-blooded. They have hair or fur on their bodies. Their young do not hatch from eggs. Well, we know that there are only 2 types of warm-blooded animals, and we've already used birds, so that just leaves mammals, which is what humans are. That was pretty easy. Number 3, these animals are cold-blooded. They breathe with gills when young, but they grow lungs when they become adults. All right, so we know it's either an amphibian, a reptile, or a fish. So we've got cold-blooded, and the next thing they talked about was they use gills when they're young, lungs when they're older. So we need to look at our breathing category. Okay, right here, amphibians use gills when born, lungs develop later. All right, let's check reptile. They only use lungs, and then fish only use gills. So right here, we're going to say amphibian. And cross it out. Number 4, these animals are cold-blooded. They breathe with gills throughout their lives, so they only use gills. So it's either a reptile or a fish. So we've got cold-blooded, cold-blooded. And then breathing is next door. Which one uses gills? Fish. Okay, we know that the last one has to be reptiles, but I'm going to still read it. It says these animals are cold-blooded. They have dry, scaly skin and breathe air through lungs. There we go. All right, back at the bottom, whoops, there we go. It says, to which vertebrate group does each animal belong? So they're giving us examples of animals, and we have to use our reference sheet to see if we can figure out which group or class they belong to. So the first one is an elephant, and that happens to be on our reference sheet. If we look over here in our example column, elephant shows up in the mammal category because elephants have hair, not a lot, but they do have some. They are warm-blooded. They breathe through lungs. They give live birth, and they take care of their young. The mothers produce milk as well. So, mammal. All right, number 7 is salamander, and we got lucky with that one too. It also happens to be in our example column right here. And if we go across, that is the amphibian group. So salamanders, they are smooth and they have wet, kind of slimy skin. Remember, amphibians, their skin has to stay wet for them to be able to survive. Salamanders are cold-blooded. They are originally born with gills, but then when they grow into an actual salamander, they develop lungs. They hatch from eggs, and their mothers do not feed milk to their young. I think once the egg has hatched, they are on their own. So we're going to say salamander is an amphibian. All right, number 8 is a penguin. We know penguins have wings. They have feathers, although they look a little different than most bird feathers. They're more of a smooth type of feather, which helps them swim in the water. Penguins hatch from eggs. They lay eggs. But penguins, they don't fly. Even though they're a bird, they don't fly. But instead, what they can do is swim under very cold water. That's how they get some fish. So we know that penguins are a type of bird. Okay, shark. Shark is on our reference sheet. It is down here in the fish section. A shark has interesting skin. It's not scaly like a, like a goldfish. It has really, really, really tiny scales. They are so small that you really can't feel them individually. They're more smooth, kind of like a catfish. They are cold-blooded. They breathe underwater, which means they use gills. Now, the only exception is sharks don't lay eggs. They actually give live birth. But the mom shark does not feed milk to the baby shark. The baby shark is kind of out on its own, trying to fend for itself. Okay, number 10 is a lizard. So if we think about lizards, I think about like the desert and seeing a lizard run across the sand. That's what comes to my mind. That type of lizard is not wet and slimy. It's dry, rough, maybe even has a few bumps on its skin. It's cold-blooded. It hatches from eggs. There's no such thing as lizard milk, okay? So the mothers don't produce milk for the babies. And they do use lungs. So if I look at my reference sheet, all of those signs point to reptile. Okay, remember reptiles are like turtles, snakes, alligators, and that includes lizards. Like a chameleon or a Komodo dragon. All right, number 11 is an alligator. So alligators, they mostly live on land. They visit the water to cool off sometimes and to hunt for food. They use lungs to breathe. For the most part, their skin is dry and bumpy and scaly. It's only wet if they've been in the water. Alligators lay eggs. So what they do is they, kind of like a turtle does, they dig a hole in the sand or the soft ground. They lay eggs and then they cover it back up. And then the eggs hatch. And then the baby alligators are on their own to find food. So, just like a lizard, an alligator, is a reptile. And that is on our reference sheet too, under reptile examples. All right, number 12, ostrich. Ostriches, those are funny little birds. Actually, they're not very little, they're very big. So ostriches definitely have feathers. They are warm-blooded. They use lungs to breathe in oxygen. They hatch from eggs. Ostriches lay very big eggs and they have a really hard shell. Mothers don't produce milk, which all of those characteristics point to a bird. A bird. Very large non-flying bird. I think we watched a video over ostriches. They can run really fast and they kick. Their legs are super strong, so you don't want to get kicked by an ostrich. All right, 13, a tree frog. If we look at our reference sheet under examples, I see the word frog in green, which means it's an amphibian. So a tree frog has smooth, wet skin. It is cold-blooded. Frogs start out as tadpoles in the water. Eventually they grow legs, lose their tail, develop lungs, and start living on the land. They hatch from soft jelly-like eggs, and the mothers don't provide milk, so they are amphibians. Number 14 is a whale. Whales happen to be on our reference sheet also because whales are kind of tricky. You might think, well, they live underwater, they must be a fish. And that's an easy thing to assume, but whales are actually mammals, okay? Although whales don't have fur, some of them do have very short little hairs, similar to an elephant. You may not notice it at first, but if you see them close up. Now, I don't think all whales have them. I think maybe just some of them do. Otherwise, they have more of a smooth, fish-like covering. All right, but whales are warm-blooded. They use lungs. They're really good at holding their breath. So what they do is they come up for air. They breathe through their blowhole on the top of their head. We watched a video. Sometimes they spray water out of it. They take a big deep breath and then they go back down underwater. They do give live birth, which makes them a mammal. And last but not least, human. Hopefully we know the answer to this. We've talked about it a lot. We do have hair. We have warm blood. Remember we talked about our body temperature is about 98.6 degrees. We use lungs to breathe in oxygen. We cannot breathe underwater. We give live birth. And the mothers do produce milk for their young. And we even have human as an example. So what we did is we looked at each animal, we kind of went through our checklist. We talked about the body covering, the blood, the breathing, how they give birth, and if the mother produces milk or not. And then that helps us narrow it down. All right, flipping over to the back. This top portion, we have to tell whether each sentence is true or false. So, number 16 says, all birds have feathers. Take a moment to think about all the different types of birds and whether they have feathers or not. I can't think of a bird that does not have feathers. I know we just talked about penguins, and it looks like they have a really smooth covering. They still have feathers. They're just really smooth feathers to allow them to swim in the water. Kind of like a duck or a goose. The top of their head is really smooth. Same type of feathers. So we're going to say that this is true. Okay, if you want to write out true, you can, or you can just put a T. Okay, number 17, all mammals have hair or fur. Oh, goodness. Well, again, I want to remind you, I am not a biologist. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up this worksheet and just double check the answer. Because now that I'm thinking about the whale whale question that makes me wonder. Okay, let's see. Okay, so according to our answer sheet, all mammals do have hair or fur. So that includes the whales, like I thought. All right, number 18, reptiles are warm-blooded. So that means crocodile, alligator, snakes. I'm gonna use my reference sheet if I don't remember it by now. Okay, reptile. Go across. It says it's cold-blooded. So that sentence is not true. That is false. All right, number 19, all birds can fly. Well, we talked about penguins and ostriches. They cannot fly. So that is false. I don't think they have the right body shape, at least ostriches. Penguins don't have the right type of feathers. Number 20, all birds have a beak or a bill. I can't think of a bird that doesn't have one. So this is going to be true. And number 21, all birds have 2 feet. Now, I have seen a goose before that had 1 foot, but that's because he got in an accident. It was at the lake. I think he probably got hit by a boat or something. So, other than that, birds are born having 2 feet, so we're going to say true. Okay, last section. Number 22 says, is a bat a bird or a mammal? That's a very good question. So we know bats, they can fly, but we have to think about a bat. Does it have a beak or a bill? Does it lay eggs? They do not. Okay, a bat has hair or fur. They're kind of fuzzy if you've ever touched one. They don't lay eggs, so they give live birth. They're warm-blooded, and they produce milk. So that means a bat is a mammal. So we're going to write mammal. And then we need to let's list 2 reasons why they're a mammal. We're going to say live birth, and fur. Okay, 23. Another very good question. Is a dolphin a fish, amphibian, or a mammal? So a dolphin is very similar to a whale. We know dolphins have a blowhole, which means they take a big, deep breath of air above the water, and then they can hold their breath when they go below the water. Okay, that means they have lungs. Fish do not have lungs, so we know it's not a fish. So we have to decide, is it a mammal or an amphibian? Okay, dolphins give live birth. They also have a little bit of hair when they are born. I think eventually it goes away and they have smooth skin. So amphibians don't have hair, they don't give live birth, and they're not warm-blooded. So that makes a dolphin a mammal. It's just one of those weird ones because it lives underwater. So we're going to say on this one, warm-blooded and lungs. All right, last question for the week, number 24. What is the difference between cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals? Okay, so I'm going to try, when we write this down, I'm going to make this as short as possible. So if I look at my reference sheet, I'm just going to compare birds and amphibians because they're right next to each other. Birds are warm-blooded, and it says they have a constant body temperature, just like we do. Amphibians, though, are cold-blooded, which means the temperature changes with the outside environment. If it's cold outside, cold blood. If it's warm outside, warm blood. So there's our difference. Now we have to figure out a way to write this. So I'm going to use the top line for cold. I'm just going to write cold. And we're going to say temperature. And I'm going to abbreviate. We've done this before. Temperature changes with the environment. Okay, warm-blooded on the bottom. On this one, we're going to say constant. Constant means the same. Constant body temp. All right, that's it for week 2's work. Next week we'll be back to language arts and math, so stay tuned for videos. I miss you guys so much. I wish I could give you guys a hug and we could go outside and play like we do in 7th hour. So just know that I'm thinking about you every day. I miss you. I hope you guys are doing good. Always, always, if you need anything, even anything like food or stuff like that, let me know. The district has some resources that I can get to you. So until then, I will see you guys next week.